Let's do a Lorcana limited set review. We're going to be starting off with our lowest cost characters and moving up to the highest cost characters. Then we're going to move on to locations, then actions, and finishing it off with items. The next video we drop will be the limited set review for the Winterspell Uncommons, and then we'll repeat that order to rares, and finishing it off with super rares and legendaries. Alright, let's get into it. Starting off is Copper, a 1-cost 2/1 Storyborn Hero puppy that says when you play this character, chosen player reveals their hand. Now he does have a small body, but he has probably one of the most effective tools you can get in the game of Lorcana, which is knowledge of an opponent's hand. That gives him a rank A in his rarity, but a rank B in the set overall. Next up is Donald Duck, a 1-cost 2/2 Inkable that produces 1 lore when questing. He's a very basic character. I'd say he's a rank C in commons, but honestly you could replace him with any of the other guys that do this and you wouldn't miss much. Same can be said for our next character. Pua, as well as Todd, and I would say the same about Darkwing Duck, except this set has quite a bit of Darkwing Duck support, so I'll give him a C. Our next character is Hercules, a 1-cost 0/3 that can boost into a 3/3. I would say that a 1-cost 3/3 that produces 1 lore by turn 2 isn't too bad. I'll say that I'll give him a C. Next up is Honker Muddlefoot, a 1-cost 1/2 that says your characters named Darkwing Duck gain resist +1. If you end up with a whole lot of Darkwing Duck cards, I would say that this card goes up to a B. If you don't, I'd say he's down in a D. It's up to you on which one you're building. Next up, we have Lilo. She has a similar problem to Honker Muddlefoot, except hers is very specifically based around Stitch. However, instead of giving Stitch resist 1, she gives herself +1 lore, which means if you don't have Stitch in play when you play her, you could still get a bonus if you play Stitch next turn. So I'd give this a C. Coming up next is Cinna, a 1-cost 2/1 with Alert that produces 1 lore when questing. Now, Cinna can challenge evasive characters, but she doesn't trade super well, so while she can get 2 damage in, that's about all she can get. I would argue that she gets a C overall. Next up is Stitch, Naughty Experiment, a 1-cost 2/1 that you can exert to have chosen opposing character gain Reckless until the start of your next turn. I'd say this is a good control piece to keep characters from questing early on, or even later in the game if you can use them right. I'd give him a B overall. Last in the 1-cost area is Thomas, a 1-cost 0/4 that produces 1 lore when questing. He has a huge amount of willpower, so I'd argue that this makes him better than most of the other 1-costs that you just use as sort of a basic land card if you've played Magic. I'm going to give him a C. Next up is David, Protective Snowboarder, a 2-cost 1/4 with Bodyguard. Now this is a good way to protect your characters early on, and an excellent way to ensure that you keep getting lore when you need it. He's unlikely to trade, but his high willpower means that he can probably block a couple of hits. I'd give him a B. Next up is Fa Zhao, Mulan's dad. Well, it's Honorable Warrior, but he's Mulan's dad. He's a 2-cost 1/4 that produces 2 lore when questing and says this character enters play with 2 damage. Now, he enters damage but produces a huge amount of lore. If you can get the damage off of him, he has a decent body, but otherwise, he's a C. Then we've got Hey Hey, a 2-cost 2/1 that says when this character is banished in a challenge, return this card from your discard to your hand. Now, it's a consistently recurring character, meaning you'll always have a body and a card to play. I'd play as many of these as I can, an A in the common slot, and a B overall. Next up we have Iduna, a 2-cost uninkable 2/3 with Evasive. She's evasive with a nice body. Not a lot of alert characters early on can trade with her. I'd give her a B in rarity and a C overall. Next we have Launchpad, Trusty Sidekick, a 2-cost uninkable 2/3 that says exert, draw a card, then choose and discard a card unless you have a character named Darkwing Duck in play. Draw and discard is good, but he gets better with Darkwing. I'd give him a B overall, but if you can get Darkwing consistently, I'd say he's an A in the rarity. Next up, we have Minnie Mouse, a 2-cost 3/3 that produces 1 lore when questing. She has a good body and can trade with every other 2-cost or less in the set. I'd give her a B in the rarity and C overall. Following Minnie is Nala, a 2-cost inkable 2/2 that produces 1 lore when questing, and says when you play this character, chosen character of yours gains evasive until the start of your next turn. There's not a lot of alert cards early on in the game, or a lot of evasive characters that intend on challenging, so I'd give this character a B in the rarity and a C overall. Next we've got Nala, No Worries, a 2-cost 1/4 that says while this character has no damage, she gets +1 lore. Early on, you're hopefully going to be able to play her for 2 and then get that 2 lore afterward, but honestly, a 1/4 that produces 1 lore when questing isn't so bad that I'm going to give her below a C, so I'll give her a high C. Unfortunately, this version of Negaduck was only available in, I believe this is Swedish. But his name is Negaduck. He's a 2-cost 4/2 inkable that produces 1 lore when questing. Next up, we have Piglet, a 2-cost 2/4 that produces 1 lore when questing. You'll notice he gets removed almost immediately by Negaduck, but he doesn't really trade with anybody else, so I'll give him a C as well. Next up is Dinky, a 2-cost 1/2 that produces 2 lore when questing and says, when you play this character, each opponent chooses one of their characters and deals 1 damage to them. Now, he deals damage on entry, which is always good, and if your opponent only has 2 characters, he'll hit both. If not, it always hits the ones that you want the least. I'd give him a C overall. Next, we have Squeaks, Cozy Caterpillar, a 2-cost inkable 0/4 with evasive. Now, giving a creature 4 willpower and evasive makes it pretty hard to remove, so I'll give this one a B in the rarity and a C overall. Next is Stitch, High Badness Level, a 2-cost 3/2 that says while you have a character named Lilo in play, this character gains Challenger +3. If you can get a Lilo on board, this card is an A. It'll have a high power and be able to wipe out just about anything in one shot. If not, I'd give it maybe a C. Next is Agnar, King of Arendelle, a 3-cost 3/4 that produces 1 lore when questing, and says while you have a queen character in play, this character gets +2 strength. I haven't seen a whole lot of queens in this set, and I would argue that even if you get one in play, he's a 5/4, which means he can hold his own, but he won't be that much more impressive than your standard guy with a big body. I'd give him a C. Next up is Aladdin, On the Edge of Adventure, a 3-cost 2/3 that produces 2 lore when questing, and says whenever you play an action, this character gains evasive until the start of your next turn. Pretty small body, and there's not a lot of actions to give him evasive, so I'm going to say he gets a C for producing 2 lore. Then we've got Boomer, Has the Beak, a 3-cost 4/3 that say when you play this character, you may exert chosen damaged character. This is a good way to challenge a character that your opponent might be trying to keep safe. Give him a B in the rarity and a C overall. Next is Darkwing Duck, Dark Wolf Dog, a 3-cost 2/4 with Rush. Given the amount of Darkwing Duck support in this deck, I would say this is at least a B, but if you can't get that Darkwing Duck support, this is a C. Then we have Li Shang, Solemn Sun, a 3-cost 2/5 with Challenger +2. Having effectively 4 strength and 5 willpower at 3 ink makes this a formidable choice, especially because he can trade with most characters and still be around next turn to produce lore. I'm going to give him a C. Next up is Minnie Mouse, Tiny Tim's Mother, a 3-cost uninkable 2/4 with support that produces 2 lore when questing. Support gives most of your characters enough to defeat any opponent in a fight, and hopefully you choose the ones that will try to hit Minnie. She also produces 2 lore, which makes up for whichever character you end up challenging with not questing. Solid B. Now we're going on to Morgana Macabre, Self-Centered Spellcaster. She's a 3-cost inkable 5/3 that produces 1 lore when questing. She has an imposing body, but she's more of a removal piece than she is a lore generator. 5 strength is enough to defeat just about any challenger or to challenge anyone and defeat them. I'd give her a solid C. Coming up, we've got Percy, Pupsicle, a 3-cost 1/4 that says this character can't challenge, but produces 3 lore when questing. It's a huge lore swing, but enough characters can take him out that I think it'll only happen once, and he doesn't have the strength to remove them back. I'll give him a B, but it's on the lower end. Then we've got Pocahontas, Finding the Way, a 3-cost 2/5 that says when you play this character, chosen character gets +1 lore this turn. She's a good way to get a lore swing as soon as she enters, basically questing the turn she comes into play. She also has a huge amount of willpower, so I'll give her a solid B. Next up, we have Scrooge McDuck, Miserly Ebenezer, a 3-cost uninkable 3/2 that produces 1 lore when questing, and says, during your turn, whenever a card is put into your inkwell, chosen character gets -1 strength this turn. Could be a good way to protect your characters, but I'm not sure the debuff will be enough in this set. Plus his small body, I'm going to give him a D, but I wouldn't be shocked if he was a bit better. Next up is Taurus Bulba, a 3-cost inkable 5/3 that produces 1 lore when questing. He's another 3-cost 5/3 that produces 1 lore, so I'll give him a solid C. Our first 4-cost is going to be Amos Slade, a 4-cost uninkable 6/4 with Alert. Given his body and the fact that he has Alert, he'll be able to get rid of the evasive characters from earlier on the list pretty easily, but he's not too good outside of that. B in rarity, but a C overall. Next up we have Big Mama, a 4-cost 3/4 that produces 2 lore when questing and has Ward. She's almost guaranteed to give 2 lore, but 4 might be a bit of a steep cost. I think I'll give her a B, but it's a low B. Next is Isis Vanderchill, a 4-cost uninkable 4/4 that says when you play this character, exert chosen opposing character. It's a good way to challenge any opposing character you feel you could damage in a fight, and her body is good enough for her stats. I give her a B in the rarity, but a C overall. Next is Maui, a 4-cost uninkable 4/3 with Rush that produces 2 lore when questing. He just lets you rush in and punch a guy, but unfortunately he's unlikely to survive the fight and pay off the 2 lore he produces. Gonna give him a C. Next is Nakoma, a 4-cost 4/6 that produces 1 lore when questing. She only produces 1 lore when questing, but I'd say her body is pretty big and easy enough to defend her. She can realistically only trade at this point in the game, so I'm going to give her a C, probably on the middle. Sarabi's a good way to protect your characters. A 4-cost 4/4 exert chosen opposing character gets -4 strength until the start of your next turn. She'll make sure that your opponent doesn't take too much of a lead in the board state. I'm going to give her a B. Next is Tiana, a 4-cost 3/4 with support that produces 2 lore when questing. The support might make up for the fact that she's small, because she'll help another guy defeat someone who could be coming after her next turn. Gonna give her a B. Then we have Tigger, Bouncing All the Way, a 4-cost 4/3 that says, when you play this character, you may return chosen character, item, or location with cost 2 or less to their player's hand. He's a good way to remove a smaller threat, or to replay a character of yours that's taken too much damage. Be sure to quest with it first if you choose the second option. Gonna give him an A. Next is Winnie the Pooh, a 4-cost 2/4 that says, when you play this character, you may return an item card from your discard to your hand. Recursion is always good, especially in a limited format. Combine that with the amount of items that banish themselves, and you have a fairly useful character in this format, a solid B. Next up is Yao, a 4-cost uninkable 4/3 that says during your opponent's turn, this character gains resist +2, and produces 2 lore when questing. Now he produces 2 lore and effectively has 5 willpower on opponent's turns. That's not too bad, could be a little bit better. I'll give him a C. Then we have Chief Tui, Weaving a Tale, a 5-cost 4/5 that produces 2 lore when questing and says, once during your turn, whenever a card is put into your inkwell, look at the top card of your deck. You may put it on either the top or the bottom of the deck. Given this is going to be a late game card, you're probably not going to be inking too much, but he is a 4/5 that produces 2 lore, so I'll give him a low C. Next up is Donald Duck, Along for the Ride, a 5-cost 4/6 that produces 2 lore when questing, and says when you play this character, you may banish chosen item. Removing an item before your opponent gets a chance to use it, which is pretty useful in an item-heavy format, could be pretty useful. Body and lore are also respectable. I'd give him a high C. Next, we have Fangmire, Icy Officer, a 5-cost uninkable 4/4 that produces 2 lore when questing, and says when you play this character, you may return a detective character from your discard to your hand. Unfortunately, there's not too many detectives in this set, but if he was inkable, this would probably be a good card. Best you could do is use him to recur other copies of himself. Give him a D. Next is Goofy, a 5-cost 5/5 that produces 2 lore when questing. And he says, when you play this character, you may ready Chosen Character. If you do, they can't quest for the rest of the turn. It's a good way to protect your weaker characters from being challenged and maintain a good board presence. It's also got good stats for the cost. I'm going to give him a B. Next up is Kanga, a 5-cost 5/5 that produces 2 lore when questing, with boost 2, and while there's a card under this character, she gets +1 lore. Now, she is potentially 3 lore on a 5/5. Still, easy to remove at that point, but would trade with whatever is used against her in a challenge. There's also a fair amount of boost support in this set, so I'm going to give it a B, but it's on the low end. After Kanga, we've got Mickhorn, a 5-cost inkable 6/5 that produces 1 lore when questing, and has Bodyguard. He's an excellent way to protect your questing characters if you already have a board up, but otherwise doesn't do too much to establish yourself. I'd give him a C on the low end. Next up, we've got Prince Naveen, a 5-cost inkable 7/6 that produces 1 lore when questing, but has no effect. He's a huge body for the cost, but he's not much else. He could be useful in removing opponents' board presence, so we'll give him a low C rank. Then there's Lumpy, a 6-cost inkable 6/5 that produces 2 lore when questing, and has Evasive. Now he has Evasive, but in the late game you've probably already played a bunch of Evasive cards, and hopefully your opponent has used up most of their removal. I'm gonna give this guy a B. And then there's Mickey Mouse, a 6-cost 6/7 that produces 2 lore when questing. He's another big body for the cost, but not much else. He's gonna be another low C. Then there's Pumbaa, a 6-cost uninkable 5/6 that produces 2 lore when questing, and says, when you play this character, each opponent chooses and discards a card. By the time you play this, your opponent's probably not going to have a whole lot of cards in hand, but if they do, it'll help even the playing field. I'd give him a low B, but maybe a high C. Ending the characters with Space Cows, a 7-cost inkable 6/8 that produces 3 lore when questing. Now this is the most expensive character in the common slot right now, and it has the highest willpower in the set. He probably won't see much play given its high cost and little to no protection. I'm going to give it a D. Next up is the locations, starting with Beast Castle. Beast Castle is a 1-cost inkable location with 6 willpower and 1 cost to move, and says, whenever a character here challenges another character, gain 1 lore. This is a good way to challenge your opponent and maintain a board presence while also gaining lore. The biggest downside to challenging is that you aren't moving yourself forward, and this location fixes that. I'll give it an A. Next up is Zootopia, a 1-cost inkable location with 5 willpower and 1 cost to move. It produces 1 lore every turn. This is a way to set up some early lore generation. I'm going to give this one an A as well. That's it for the locations, so let's move on to the actions. Starting off, we've got Nearly Indestructible. Chosen characters of yours gets resist +2 until the start of your next turn on a 1-cost inkable action. Paying 1 mana to potentially prevent 2 damage is a pretty good rate. I'll give it a low C. Then we've got Swordplay, a 1-cost inkable action that says chosen character gains Challenger +3 this turn. This turns any character that you've been using into a piece of removal. This makes sure that the only downside is that whatever character you use this to challenge with is probably going to end up getting sacrificed in the process, so make sure to use it wisely, giving it a low B. Next we've got Come Out and Fight, a 2-cost inkable action that says put all cards from under chosen character, item, or location on the bottom of their player's deck in a random order, then draw a card. This is a good way to counter the boost strategies in this deck and let you draw a card. I'd say it's still not that great of a choice in a limited set. I'll probably give it a C on the low end. Next action is Distract, a 2-cost inkable action that says chosen character gets -2 strength this turn. Draw a card. It's good protection and the cantrip effect is nice, and it's always good to have card draw and board protection on the same card. I'm gonna give it a B. Then we've got Force of a Great Typhoon, a 2-cost inkable song that says chosen character gets +5 strength this turn. The fact that this is a song is good, but unfortunately that would mean that you need at least 2 characters in play and that neither of them would be questing. Probably good for removal in the later part of the game, but don't expect it to help too much early on. I give it a C. Following up that action, we have Mother Will Protect You, a 2-cost inkable song that says chosen character can't be challenged until the start of your next turn. This is even better than Evasive. This cancels all challenge to a character you control, and you can sing the card or just play it for 2. Really good card, giving it an A. Then we've got Snowball Fight, a 2-cost inkable action that says each opponent chooses and discards a card. If you have a character with Evasive in play, you gain 1 lore. If you don't have a lot of evasive, this is still a C, because hand removal at early parts of the game leads to a small hand at the late parts of the game. If you have evasives, this is a solid B, allowing you to gain lore with it. Then we've got Strike a Good Match, a 2-cost inkable song that says draw 2 cards, then choose and discard a card. This is a net zero in card advantage, but it does let you find some good cards in your deck, and if you sing it, it's free looting. I'll give it a C. Continuing with The Terror That Flaps in the Night, a 2-cost inkable action that says deal 2 damage to chosen opposing character. If you have a character named Darkwing Duck in play, deal 3 damage instead. This can be a good way to ping a character the opponent may be trying to protect, or just deal that last bit of damage. Even better with Darkwing Duck, but probably still just a B. Lastly, we've got Marching Off to Battle, a 4-cost inkable song that says if a character was banished this turn, draw 2 cards. It's always good to get a card that lets you draw 2, and if you can sing it, it's even better. The only downside is a character needs to have been banished, but you can attack with a small guy and get him banished and then sing with a big one. I'd give him a B. Starting off the items, we've got Blue Smoke, a 1-cost uninkable item that says if you have a character named Darkwing Duck in play, you pay 1 less to play this item. Exert, pay 1, banish this item. Chosen character gains ward until the start of your next turn. Without Darkwing Duck, this is 2 ink to give protection. With Darkwing Duck, this is 1 ink to give protection. I'm going to give this a C, but definitely consider it in a Darkwing Duck deck if you can make it. Continuing on with items, we have the Infra-Pink Ultra Scan Specs, a 1-cost inkable item that says when you play this item, draw a card, then choose and discard a card. And banish this item. Chosen character gains Alert this turn. First, it lets you loot, then allows any character of yours to challenge an evasive character. Honestly pretty good. Gonna give it a B. Next, we have Pot of Honey, a 1-cost inkable item that says banish this item. Chosen exerted character can't ready at the start of their next turn. It lets you target a character, but that character already has to be exerted, which is a downside. But that still gives you some board control. Honestly, this isn't great outside of heavy item control decks, probably gonna give it a D. Finally, we have Tiny Tim's Crutch, a 1-cost inkable item that says exert, chosen character gains support this turn. Early game, this doesn't do much, but in the late game, it can turn a character that's been damaged into a beast that goes out in a blaze of glory. Gonna give it a high B. That's my ranking of cards for this set. Let me know what you think. I'm going to be releasing the uncommons tomorrow. Always remember, have a great day, and I'll see you next time.